Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Evening. Another episode of Siblings Perspective coming your way. I am excited about today's guest. We've been going back and forth for quite a while to try and get her on, and you will soon find out why. Hi, chums. How are you? Hi. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thank you for joining. It says we're waiting for more people, and then once I see my guest, I shall bring her on. Good. Hi, Fumi. Thank you so much, Fumi. You're always like one of the first to jump on once we come on. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And I hope you're spreading the word. Yeah, Fumi. Spread the word. Help us raise more awareness and also just create, advocate for this population, really. Okay, so I hope everybody is okay, at least. Thank you so much. Okay, and at least those of us in Nigeria were beginning to calm down a bit and take a deep breath and try to reset. I've been eating bread and drinking pap to reset. So I'm sure we'll all be fine one way or the other. Okay, so that's by way of introduction, like I always say, this series started based on my own personal experience with my children. Having yeah, so for me, we got to eat that bread and drink ogi, get energy to reset and continue doing the things that we have to do. We can't come and kill ourselves, Abby. Like we say, we can't come and go and kill ourselves. So yeah, so I mean, having a daughter who's on the spectrum and with her siblings, and I just realizing that there was quite a bit that the siblings didn't know. And looking back, I kind of found out that we hadn't equipped them enough, and which wasn't really like very fair to them. And so that's got me thinking and questioning things about what is happening with other people out there, other families. What are they doing, or what have they done to empower other children, whether their siblings or even the environment? And so siblings perspective was born out of it. And what I've also found so far, there are some of the children who hitherto have been very private and quiet, but as soon as we contact them or their parents and they say, oh, I'm not sure, I'll find out if he or she is interested. Some of the siblings kind of jump at it, and the others come out very, and the parents are like, oh, I didn't think he or she would be interested in doing this, but they just jump at it. And I tell them that I think that besides it being an out for them, they're also at the point where they it's like, okay, let me just get this off my chest. How do we say it? It's oh, okay, you know what, that word that starts with C and ends with with C, but it's like relieving a huge burden for them. Okay, so Um, my head is going to disappear very briefly. Oh, it's not even here. Okay, no, my head isn't disappearing. I'm right here. So I'm looking to see for where my guest is so I can bring. Do I see her? Let me see. Or am I the one that's put? Okay, no. Hmm. These things sometimes behave in a funny manner. Um, yeah, so let me see. Am I so okay? Let me let me see. Am I supposed to okay. If can you please send me the request to join? I don't know why it's not it's busy telling me invite to join. Aha, there we go. Okay, so let's do that. Yeah, I've sent the request. Yes, I see I've sent it. These things have a way of I've clicked it. So why is it still not going? Sorry guys, these IG things sometimes. There we are. Finally. Hi. Okay. There. That took a while. How are you? I'm very well,
I'm
thank
well. How
you.
are you?
Okay, so Iku Nwosu is here. Um, full disclosure, I know Iku, but her parents, well, her mom has been my friend for ages, and her dad too. But that's not the point. When you listen to Ikuna speak about her experience, the whole thing is that we hope that it will resonate with a lot of people, especially we Africans. Okay, so as usual, I'm just going to say, okay, Iku, welcome. And then I'm going to let her introduce herself. And then she's going to give us a background story. And as usual, if there's something she says that I need her to expand on, I will jump in and ask her. And then if there are questions or thoughts in my head that I need her to speak to in terms of this whole thing, I will just prompt her to do so. And just sit back, everybody. And the floor is yours, Iku. Take it away.
Hi. So yes, my name is Iku. Um, I grew up in Canada. My parents immigrated there when I was a toddler, and I have one sister. In terms of more on me, I grew up in Canada. I've always been like more of a very academically driven person. Um, really enjoyed growing up specifically in Ontario around the Toronto area, in a city called Mississauga. I eventually went on to do a health sciences bachelor's and then just completed medical school last year. So now I live in Vancouver doing my residency in obstetrics and gynecology. But it really was throughout medical school that I personally learned more about autism, and just the spectrum of autism and more of how autism presents and how we can best like support people with autism. And that's kind of grown into how I approach things in my own family. And yeah, happy to chat
Okay.
more about anything
So,
or any topics.
when you, by the time you got into medical school and you started hearing about the autism and how it presents, did it kind of jog your memory, or did you pause and say, "Oh, maybe"? Did you start asking questions of your own situation and maybe your sister, for instance?
Yeah, I would say before going into medical school, I, and even just growing up, I always knew that my sister was different. And I always knew that she just seemed to just be different and have different needs and just a different need for structure in life. I feel like is what I always noticed. But going into medical school, I really noticed when they listed the symptoms and the main ones being like repetitive patterns of behavior, which really is that structure that I noticed growing up. But then also another big symptom or like sign of autism is like fixed and rigid interests. And both of those combined really reminded me of my sister immediately, and also gave me a bit of that aha, because something that it's something that was brought up in like throughout life, but I never really, because when you're a child, when you're going through, even when I was in undergrad, I didn't really think too much about it. But then being in the position where I was learning about it in a very academic way helped me to see, you know, that for what it was, and then be able to kind of
Okay.
understand how that related to
So,
my sister.
besides her need for having structure and that rigidity, was there anything else in terms, maybe like the social aspect of her life that, stood out?
Yeah, I think another category is the social aspect. From what I remember, and it's, for one, I think when we were younger, I honestly, when we were like maybe below the age of 10, I couldn't tell you I really noticed a big difference between my sister and things. Like, it wasn't something that I really noticed. We kind of felt, kind of same, and there came a point where it wasn't really, we weren't really able to build a connection further after a certain age. It's what it felt like to me. And that really is the like lack of emotional reciprocity that is described in autism spectrum disorders. And then also like the difficulty of, like, just making and creating relationships is definitely something that I noticed. But in my mind, there are people who don't have autism spectrum disorder who also have those difficulties. And so that wasn't something that really pushed me to think down that line.
Okay.
But it's definitely something I
So,
noticed.
I guess we'll come back to that a bit, but just to put it out there. So when you say there are other people who have difficulties with the social skills and all that emotional reciprocity, as it were, I'm just thinking that now because for you, you and your sister, you actually got a definitive, would I say, not like diagnosis or a tag, a label, much later in life. Yeah. So you're 20 something. And she's 27. So this is between 25 and 27 that you're having to put a name or a label to what it was, okay, or what it is right now. So think about those people. So that's something I want us to come back to later. And so at the point where you then got the label, or you got the label, talk us through that. How did it feel in terms of like the family dynamics? What happened? Because we're looking at, especially being Blacks and being Africans, how did that pan out?
Um, I wouldn't say there was a day that it was like, this is the day that we realized this is what's been going on. I wouldn't say there was anything like that. I would say it was kind of a realization over time, and it was different for my whole family. Like, for my parents is one thing, and for me is another thing, because I feel like my parents have gotten hints of it, and hints of knowing that that it was autism specifically over the years. Whereas for me, I maybe got a hint of it in undergrad. I think maybe my dad brought up the idea of it to me, but it was kind of just out of the blue, and I didn't really think too much about it, or didn't really know what that would mean for me, and didn't have a professional that I could talk to about it. But I got through medical school and realized, okay, this actually seems to be what it is very clearly to me. I did talk to I think my mom or my parents both about it. And just from what I learned in school, I said, it's something that I think requires not just us to sit on this and talk about it theoretically. We need to, there needs to be therapists involved. There needs to be like true action involved. That was my opinion. I personally have gone to a therapist just for my own life. Just for my own life, because of just stress of school, and just, I think everyone can benefit from talking to a therapist at some point in their life. So I definitely am a big proponent of that. spoken enough about in like African communities. But I spoke to a therapist about how I was feeling with just understanding this about my sister, and she gave me really good advice on just speaking very openly about it with my parents and giving, and just also, but also letting my parents be parents and not trying to be a parent myself as a sibling, and having a bit of that boundary for myself, because if you can get stressed thinking about your sibling or your child, but you're also the child in the situation.
Okay, so speak to that. Maybe you need to speak to that some more, kind of. So when you think about or the emotional impact that it had, which made you perhaps go speak to a professional, what was that like? In terms of the burden, your thoughts around. Okay, so this is it. What's the next step beyond having a therapist for your sister, in terms of what do I need to be doing, looking back and looking forward?
Yeah. So when I went to see my therapist, my sister and my relationship with my sister was one topic that I wanted to talk about, but it was also, I was learning more about myself in other ways, because I was about halfway through medical school. I was getting really stressed out about how I was going to graduate eventually, and I had a lot of really good friends. I really liked my friend group in Ontario, and I was very attached to my friends, and I was very scared to move on from them. And my therapist really helped me break down, why do I have this kind of almost obsession with my friends, and bringing it back to my childhood. And she really realized that it was because, after my sister and I got to a point where it was difficult to connect, I sought a lot of connection from my friends. And so since then, my friends have almost felt like the connection people have with their siblings, just because obviously you need some of that emotional reciprocity. And that was causing me this feeling that I was going through even now as an adult. And learning that helped me understand what my relationship with my sister and what it was like, how that was affecting me. But also, I also think it was important for me to learn that even though my sister was going to go through is going through therapy and is learning about herself, and my parents learning and I'm learning about myself and everything, the goal of all of this is not to necessarily change my sister as a person. She's always going to be herself, like very truly herself. And it's okay if I need my own relationships and friendships that can give me what I need, while also still understanding and having a connection with my sister that's just different than two siblings that are in a neurotypical, or both neurotypical. So I think that was a big piece of it, is just understanding what expectations I can have, and how I'm allowed to feel, and just letting myself
what it is. Okay, so for those who's joining and later, so this is about Iku is speaking about her sister who got diagnosed as an adult, basically, and she didn't have a clue, that this is what it was prior to a couple of, maybe 2-3 years ago, going through medical school. So I'm wondering, so are there skills or that you've been taught or given to research on how to sort of build that connection that you didn't have with your sister much earlier and that you can do now? Are there things that you've been asked to do or equipped with to deal with that and try to make that connection?
I feel like any tools or skills that I got would have been from my original therapist that I had when I was in medical school. Since I've moved provinces, I can't really use the same therapist anymore, but the point still stands. But basically, in terms of strategies, one is trying to connect in the areas that we do have obviously overlap, because she has, of course, very clear interests, things that she likes, things that she likes to do, talk about, and we can do those things, whether it's going to the movies or watching a movie that she likes that I also like. There are areas of overlap where you can find connection, which is good. And also, I think one thing I've learned about my sister is that she, and I think this might be true for any person, is that she still enjoys just being around everybody or being around all of us. And so when I'm home, I just like, whenever I'm home in general, I just like to, when I'm in my parents' house, I like to just kind of stay in an open space, like whether that's just in the living room, just be accessible to people, to just to feel my presence. And I feel like there's a lot of power in just being physically present for somebody, whether or not they can verbally as much connect with you or discourse with you is one thing, but I think it's still good to just be a supportive family member with your presence. Of course, I've moved very far away, and so I'm not home as I was before, but when I am, I still just try to make it valuable.
How is she relating with you now that she, okay, first, before that, is she aware fully of what it is that's going on with her now, you would say? And that she has a label of what's,
I would say I'm not, I would say it's more a question for my parents than it is for me, because I'm not sure where they're at fully. And I've just tried to stay in child mode.
Yeah, get into the adult stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I would still say, like, occasionally she'll send me a video that she found funny, and I'll just try to connect with her on that and reply and say, oh, let's just talk to her about these things. And so I think that, but that's definitely a difference from what I would have said like 3-4 years ago. So I think there is some awareness of her and what she needs and what things she can do to feel a connection with me in a way
so you would attribute these changes to her receiving intervention right now. Okay, so would it be, I mean, so what's your impression about around intervention, even if it's coming late?
I think it's essential. I think at the end of the day, you can't control what happened in someone's childhood. If, you know, when you're an adult, you can't control what happened even like last year. You can't control what happened yesterday, but you do have some control over today, over this year, over what you choose to do from now on. And I'm not like a specialist in this area. I'm not even close. But I think from what I understand from a lot of specialists is that even if it's delayed, of course, early intervention is the gold standard. It would be the best. But doing something now is definitely better than doing nothing. And I think when it comes to therapy, I think that's true for every human. I think whether you're in your 20s or in your 60s, I think a lot of people, life goes and ebbs and flows. Life keeps on happening. And we are constantly learning how to deal with new challenges that life brings to us. And so anybody can benefit from therapy intervention in that context, but especially someone who is autistic can definitely benefit throughout the chapters or things that they're at right now. And I think also when it comes to my sister, you know, she has done so much. She was able to accomplish so much in her life before any intervention. And I think that also was kind of part of why it came late, is because when someone can hit the milestones that, you know, people expect, you think, okay, why would I even need to intervene with this person? But there's still value in that, especially as
so you've just touched on something I would expand on. So, you know, with like you said, when milestones have been met, okay, so when you think about us Africans especially, and maybe most of humanity anyway, you're speaking when you should, you're walking, like you say, all the milestones, you're going to school, you're doing everything. All these other subtle signs, or sometimes in your face signs anyway, are not really dealt with. We sort of like compartmentalize and maybe push them away and get on with what we think is more important. But when the chips are down, when something rattles that cage, we need to step back and bring the help. I say, well, whatever intervention or assistance the individual needs, I mean, at that point in time. Yeah? Okay. So think about, maybe it's a bit too far out, but do you kind of like have any thoughts around where, I mean, she's done so well coming, but in terms of future relationships and that sort of thing, do you think it's something that she can handle with time, maybe getting married or understanding other relationships? Yeah.
Uh, I'm not sure. I feel like I would have to talk to her about it because I don't think she has an interest in getting married. Like she's
Hmm.
expressed that. I don't know if that would change, but I would just trust her telling me that. So I
Hmm.
don't know if that would necessarily change. But otherwise, I think like everyone has like she's had friendships as a child, you know. So definitely there's someone who has the capacity for that.
Hmm.
There's the interest that was there, but at some time, yes. But of course, it it gets more difficult for everybody as they get older to make new connections, to make new friends, because you just life just funnels people into a clear routine. People get married, have those things take up a lot of your time, and you want to give time to those things. So I think that makes it harder. But I think it's always possible to connect with people who have similar interests to you. And so putting yourself in situations
Yeah.
where you meet people who have similar interests to you is always possible. And I think
Okay,
anybody,
awesome,
any
awesome.
person.
I'm just think about it. What would be your top advice? I know we mentioned a few of them to people who have either siblings or children or know individuals who perhaps may be on a spectrum or are showing signs of being on a spectrum but haven't done anything or haven't really questioned the need to do something about it.
I would say I understand where someone is coming from in that situation. And if you're not sure how to navigate your specific situation, I would say what worked for me was talking to a therapist about it, and they gave me very good advice. So I'd recommend that if you are able to do that and you don't know how to navigate it and you don't want to talk to someone in your life that knows you, knows everything about your life, knows your family, then a therapist is a nice third party person that you could talk to about it. If you didn't want to go that route and you just know you want to like address this, if it's like a sibling, I would definitely say talking to your parents about it. But also you could talk directly to your sibling about it if you're comfortable and say, my therapist, for example, said, you know, if you just clearly look at the symptoms of autism spectrum disorders and you read them out and look at them, they're very, you know, like well defined. You could always talk to either your parent or your sibling and say, these are the things this is the list of symptoms, this is the
Mm-hmm.
list of things that construct this diagnosis. How do you feel it fits with you? Do you think this fits with with the person in question, etc.? And seeing how receptive they are to that. And then also just approaching it from a place of love and empathy and say, oh, you know, especially if it's later in life, well, this is something that maybe should have been addressed earlier, but we can't control that. And all we can control now is what we're going to do moving forward. And we can do a lot of good, a lot of benefit from acting now and acting sooner. But I think I also have a lot of empathy for people that don't that are scared, because there is definitely stigma around autism and people make a lot of comments and jokes about it. I've definitely noticed that as I've gotten older, people love to use it as like almost like a joke. um and I'm not fully sure where it's coming from. I'm not sure if it's fully like people not having a problem with autism but just truly thinking that this
Mm-hmm.
combination of symptoms is very clear and easy to recognize in some people, kind of negative feelings towards it. I don't know. I can't always tell. But so I can understand how when people are making those kind of comments in your personal life, how you wouldn't necessarily want to recognize this as
Mm-hmm.
part of your life or part of your family's life, but it's important. And
Yeah.
this person that has autism is someone who's deserving of the best in life that they can have. And the best way you can get there is by getting them intervention
Yeah.
or help that
So
is supportive to
so
them.
when you look at that stigmatization and all the whatever that goes with it and people just making a joke out of it, You've just spoken a little bit about it in terms of advocacy, what we do as family members. What can the environment, the larger environment or society as a whole do more of if they're not doing with what you know now? What do you think they can do to just help us?
Um, I would say for me, I think the best thing that could be done is just like more acceptance and more just yeah, just it's more internal work, but more just awareness that there are many people that are autistic, and the best thing we can do is just say that this is another life. This is just a way, almost a way of living, a way of brain is formed, the way someone sees and experiences the world. And I think just having people be more accepting of that as a way a person can be, and it's not necessarily this terrible thing that this person doesn't live and experience the world the way you do. It doesn't mean they experience the wrong way.
Yeah.
And just that mental shift, I think, is really important. Not seeing it as this person has something wrong with them. I just don't believe that personally. And I think that's a very incorrect way to think about it. And I think that's the balance, because then you have this idea of figure out how to fix this person and make them more like the rest of us. And that can be very traumatizing for somebody who just, can you imagine someone trying to tell you to live differently, to think and live? I think an even greater stretch, this is honestly a challenge for myself, is to read a book about the topic. Actually, give me 1 second. My therapist was the one who told me to find this author.
Brandon, yes.
So it's I got it from the library finally, but it's just autism. And I think just starting here, because a lot of people read, and so reading, YouTube videos, just taking even 10 minutes to learn more from people who have autism. Yeah. This person is someone with autism, and not necessarily as academically, like there's lots of videos that do just interviews or talking to people with autism, how they feel about things. Just starting with that, even just a 10 video, I think is a good thing.
Thank you very much. Especially for, what gets to me is that right now, because I'm in the field as well, and a mom of an autistic person as well, I try to excuse some behaviors a lot more, because you never can tell. The person that's behaving in the so-called odd way may just be doing that because, look at your sister finally having a label 26, 27 odd years later of her life. So let's think about the number of people out there who are adults that haven't been diagnosed, that may be behaving in ways we find odd or strange, and then just cut them that slack, which is what I'm hearing. Educate ourselves, okay? Just educate ourselves some more on this specific disability, because it doesn't, okay, so if anybody sees your sister, by just looking at her, are they going to say, oh, she's autistic? And so that's the point. You see your sister, she's walking with you. Nobody's going to see autism written all over her, or at least plastered on her forehead. And that's part of the issue. If we can be more, cut people some more slack, be nicer, be kinder, try to find out why somebody is doing or behaving the way they are, we may just be surprised. Okay? So, anything else you want to tell us about?
No, I would say like I'm an imperfect person, and I'm still learning, and I give myself a lot of grace, and I hope everyone
Yeah.
experiencing something like this gives themselves a lot
Especially
of
for
grace as
those who
well.
find out much later in life, which is why we really have Iku here. She's coming to terms with her sister's condition and just, tying it back to her childhood. And I mean, like you keep saying, and we say, you just leave the past where it is. But occasionally we're human and we're thinking, oh, maybe we could have had a whole lot more together if I had as much knowledge or information as I do now, or at least you're beginning to acquire. Okay, so people that have adults in their lives or finding out much later really need to cut themselves some slack. Don't beat up too much on yourself. Okay, so I know you're being the child and leaving the parents to do the parenting, but other than making yourself available, when you're at home, what else, or, having that text message back and forth with your sister, is there something that you're doing differently or anybody else can do differently to support them, you know, besides just reading? Do you think there are like other practical steps that we can take to support them considering their vulnerability?
I
Okay.
feel like I'm still learning that myself. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like I don't
Yeah.
know the answer to that question fully for myself. And
Good.
I would just need someone
Good.
to
So
tell
that
me.
means, so that's where I was going with this. So you need to so when we find out much later in life, we need to be open to learning. We need to be open to hearing what other people have to say. Sometimes maybe not just from the therapist, but maybe professionals, other siblings that have experienced this for much longer or have had more information than you've had, in terms of, so that's it. So for people who find out much later in life, it would be good to have that connection with people who've walked the road much longer than you have. Would that help? Okay. Lovely. And it doesn't really matter
Yeah,
where the person is in the
for sure.
world. It's just that shared experience or shared information that really matters. So people get together, help yourselves out. I've got people who've come on that have older siblings in their 30s and 40s and all of that. So it would be good to have, which is partly why this is here, have those connections, chit chat, and then you can get more information on what it's like and what the journey has been like to help you. Okay? Lovely, lovely. So happy to have you here. One of the main reason Iku is on is to encourage, I can't say it enough, anybody who's finding out that their sibling is autistic as an adult. Do not be, I mean, well, we can't say don't be shocked. You will be, you probably will be shocked. You probably would be emotionally distressed. All sorts of things can happen. But like she said, get the help you need. If you need to see a therapist for yourself, please do so. Don't do the African thing and think that therapy is, I don't even know what to call it. That it's a taboo, or we don't have issues. We do have issues. So get the help you need. Thank you so much, Iku, and we'll connect you with some people and just keep praying and just holding you up that you walk this path with more understanding, more information, and that emotional space with your sister will be filled very soon. Okay? So thank you so much for
Thank
lending a
you. Thank you
voice.
very much for having
Thank you. All right, then. Enjoy the
me.
rest of
Thank
your
you.
day. All right. All right. Bye bye.
You too. Take care.
Okay, people. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll be putting this up. And please, 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 if you have siblings or they're adults around you that you think need the assessment, or the families that need to know what is going on with their child, older child, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll help you walk that road. Thank you for joining, and we will see you next time. Take care.